The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. On July 18th, 2026, the ongoing conflict in Mali reached another critical flashpoint. A military convoy moving through the northern region was targeted in a highly organized ambush. This development has triggered a major information war online, exposed the changing dynamics on the ground, and highlighted the involvement of international actors in the Sahel. To understand what is truly happening in Mali right now, we have to look past the immediate propaganda and break down the tactical reality of this latest assault. The ambush took place early in the morning of July 18th. An army convoy was in transit from the Kita and Aguhok zones, moving downward towards Gao. The specific point of failure occurred near the locality of Tabrich. This location is not accidental. The stretch of terrain between Gao and Aguhok is punctuated by two major rural choke points, Tabrich and Tabakot. For those tracking this conflict closely, Tabrich will sound intensely familiar. Just weeks earlier, during the heavy fighting that took place from July 4th to July 9th, militant forces attempted an identical ambush at this exact geographical bottleneck.
Good evening. Statement from the Ministry of National Defense. This day, Friday, July 17, 2026, around 4 o'clock, a detachment of defense and security forces in administrative liaison was subjected to a complex attack by armed terrorist groups Gati on the Bankilare-Terra axis near the village of Donguro in the area.
From Terra.
The provisional toll is as follows. On the friendly side, 16 martyrs and 23 injured, including 9 seriously, evacuated to the military hospital. On the enemy side, 15 terrorists neutralized, 5 motorcycles recovered, and 4 destroyed. The prompt reaction, intervention of reinforcements from Terra and aerial units forced the enemy to break contact and retreat towards Lando. Sweeping and securing operations continue to search for the fleeing enemy. In the name of the President of the Republic, Head of State, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the Minister of State, Minister of National Defense, President.
War is war. Our army resisted valiantly, but it should be discussed because we see a lot of fake news already circulating. There was indeed an ambush early this morning against a convoy of our army, a convoy moving between Kita, Aguelhok, and Efis, heading towards Gao, particularly at the location of Tabrich. It is at this level that there are breeding grounds. Do not forget, during the Battle of Anefis from the 4th to the 9th of July, they had already set up a first ambush at the same level. Because when you leave Gao to go to Anefis, there are 2 small towns, or rather 2 large villages, Tabrich and then Tabakot on the way. It is at the level of Tabrich that they set up this ambush. You know, when an ambush occurs, unfortunately, it's war. There are damages on both sides. That's where they were able to, according to the statement from our Russian partners, Africa Corps, they were able to take some prisoners of war, some of our soldiers who surrendered. What did the instigators do? And you will see on their propagandist's page, I will not mention their name. What did they say? That they will no longer take prisoners. So they carried out summary executions, since they are supported by certain NATO countries. Not to say that they have committed war crimes, crimes against humanity. They are trying to redeem themselves, to reconsider by saying what? That no, it was Russian drones that bombed, but it's quite the opposite. People surrendered and they took the time to execute people. That's why I say there are only lessons that we learn. We pray for the eternal rest of our martyrs. Yes, the young Frenchwoman Zelensky, Taybone, and others, we pray in any case for the eternal rest of our martyrs. We wish a speedy recovery to our wounded.
As soon as they set up the ambush,
our army communicated to say that there is an ongoing ambush and that the Malian army's response is also underway. Indeed, it's true. In this response, our aerial assets intervened. Our drones intervened and the aerial equipment of our Russian partners also arrived. Pickup trucks, armed pickup trucks were immediately neutralized. We destroyed 2 pickup trucks that were somewhat camouflaged on site. Then 2 other pickup trucks trying to escape were also neutralized a bit further ahead. The drones neutralized many enemy fighters, but by the time the aerial vectors arrived, they had already done their dirty work. Their dirty work, that's what they know how to do, barbarians. They boast about it, about having committed crimes against people. That's where Wasim Nasser should be questioned. They accused us of shooting at the Yadagami because there were 2 who were no longer a threat. I said no. In the text of war, in international human rights law, Yaz still constituted a threat.
he was neutralized. But there you have soldiers.
People who surrendered, who raised both hands. But afterwards, they didn't even delay. They didn't even take 50 minutes. They did not hesitate to execute them immediately. The famous NGOs will not talk about it, will not mention it. But we also wish to say that those who did this did not get far because they were neutralized right after, thanks to the arrival of reinforcements from our air support. They were very quickly neutralized. We say there are many lessons. It's war, and with everything that happens, every tragedy, lessons are learned very quickly. You will notice those who dealt with Tessalit, or even when we left Kidal trying to surround us in Nephis, that was not the case. At Nephis, we learned all the lessons, 4, 5 days, 6 days of fighting. We had the opportunity to neutralize many of them. They lost more than 2,000 men. More than 2,000 men, they lost that on the spot. Because we learned the lessons. They thought we would withdraw from Anafis and abandon that position. No, we also evolved in our strategy. And this ambush story, I can promise you, will soon be a distant memory because we will know how aerial vectors will take the lead, anticipate the threat. No doubt our general staff is very strong. We are in the process of learning all possible lessons. Lessons? Why? Because we now know that there are people we are facing.
These barbarians, they are not people to whom one should perhaps surrender.
We know that we will use until our last bullet because we are dealing with real barbarians, a non-conventional army, working for the interests of certain countries, but who do not answer to the name of any country. I hear some of them, their propagandists announce here it's their area, it's their land, their territory. I said, what referendum granted you this area? You came and found people. They are the natives of the area. You are just iron messengers. All those who have the mindset of wanting, or in any case think they can divide Mali, take the hot part of Mali that contains the Taudeni Basin, are mistaken. It's a war for oil being waged, executing Malian civilians or soldiers who are often captured, who were on the move, returning to their families. These were not soldiers heading into combat zones, but those returning. Taking this, they show themselves, this happy one shows himself very weak, but these are lessons we are learning. No tauto teto. Our general staff has learned all the necessary lessons, and the proof is that we have destroyed almost all those who set up this ambush. Many of them have been neutralized. They said they took the equipment, but asked them if they didn't abandon the same equipment. They abandoned it. It simply shows people who are sent on a mission and they have many children in their ranks whom they are recruiting. They are lacking men. I am so angry at Kufa and others who show themselves, it's said. However, people of Africa, there are many lessons. Even at the level of communication, that's why we decided to record this right away and respond to it. Because the more time passes, the more their fake news will try to take the lead. We need to explain what really happened, and it's war. In war, as in war, we are convinced of one thing: victory is ours. And besides, it's a convoy they boarded, and the convoy resumed its journey. Oh yes, I assure you, they attacked the convoy. The time of, there you go, the men who had advanced to take prisoners before the convoy group arrived and the aerial vectors, then they were neutralized and the convoy resumed its journey. Saying that they recovered all the equipment is propaganda, it's false. The convoy resumed this journey, and the lesson we learned in terms of communication is that in such situations we must quickly respond and take the lead so that their fake news does not take precedence. People of Africa, we thank you. We hope to see you tomorrow for another topic at the top of the news. Thank you.
The strategy of the armed groups is clear: trap Malian logistics and personnel in these transit corridors where cover is sparse and reinforcement take time to arrive. However, the nature of the convoy itself reveals a shift in who is being targeted. This was not an aggressive combat unit pushing forward in a frontline theater. This was a transit convoy carrying soldiers returning from development, heading back towards their bases and families. When the ambush was launched, the forward element of the convoy bore the brunt of the initial strike before the main body of the force could close the distance. In the opening chaos, several Malian soldiers were cut off and taken as prisoners of war. What followed next has become the counterpiece of the current psychological and informational warfare surrounding Mali. According to the official communications and reports from regional security partners, specifically African and Russian auxiliary forces operating alongside the Malian state, militant propagandists immediately began broadcasting that they would no longer take or hold prisoners. The timeline indicates that within less than an hour of surrendering with their hands raised, these captured soldiers were summarily executed. This represents a severe violation of international humanitarian law, specifically the laws covering the treatment of surrendered combatants. In an attempt to mitigate the inevitable international backlash and accusations of war crimes, insurgent groups have tried to reverse the narrative, claiming that the captured forces died during subsequent airstrikes conducted by Russian drones. However, chronologically, tracking of the incident disproved this. The executions were completed before any air outfit arrived on the scene. As soon as the ambush commenced, the Malian military command activated its response protocols. Drones units and Russian air assets were scrambled to the Tabriz sector. While the RA response could not prevent the initial executions due to the speed of the militant retreat, it completely altered the outcome for the ambushes. Armed pickups used by the insurgents were spotted attempting to camouflage themselves near the site, while others attempted a high-speed retreat deeper into the desert. The military's drone strikes were highly precise, 2 camouflage pickup trucks were destroyed on site, and an additional 2 technical vehicles fleeing the sector were intercepted and neutralized further down the axis. The auxiliary fighters who executed the ambush suffered heavy casualties from these strikes, effectively wiping out the unit responsible for the assault before they could successfully exfiltrate with the heavy equipment they claimed to have captured. Despite insurgent propaganda claiming a total rout of government forces and the seizure of the entire logistic column, the reality is that after the airstrikes cleared the threat, the main body of the Malian convoy reassessed, resecured the line, and resumes its march toward its destination. To understand why the fight has become so vicious, we have to look at the broader strategic losses the insurgent forces have sustained over the last year, particularly following the government's capture of Kidal and the massive engagements near Tinzawati. Militant forces have consistently attempted to surrender and isolate Malian army positions. During multiple days of intense, sustained combat in the northern sectors, insurgent groups faced catastrophic attrition, losing an estimated 2,000 fighters. The insurgent strategy now relies almost entirely on asymmetric hit-and-run ambushes because they no longer possess the conventional manpower to hold territory or force a full Malian military retreat from critical northern strongholds. Furthermore, reports indicate that these armed groups are facing an acute recruitment crisis, increasingly relying on forced conscription and the mobilization of minors to fill the gap left by their heavy losses in recent months. Beyond the tactical maneuvers, this conflict is driven by major geopolitical and resource interests. Insurgent propagandists often frame this fight as a defense of indigenous territory or local autonomy. However, no democratic referendum or local census has ever legitimized their control. Instead, the northern region of Mali sits directly on top of the Tuandini Basin, a massive, largely untapped geological reserve rich in oil, gas, and mineral wealth. What is being sold online? The Malian military is moving towards a strategy where ARN reconnaissance and drones vectors must permanently preside any major ground movement, actively squanting transit corridors like the Tabriz axis to neutralize threats before ground troops enter a choke point. The war in Mali is no longer just a counter-insurgency. It is a high-stakes geopolitical confrontation over sovereignty and resources. While the information war continues to rage on social media with fake news and manipulation reports, the strategic reality remains. The Malian state is digging in, adapting its tactics, and refusing to fight the wolf of Tudani Basin. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, West Africa, and in Mali.